Yes, I have just started the recording. I think we can kick it off.
Good afternoon. I'm David Collins, Vice Chair of the Board. Nick is going to be on the phone listening, and he'll have comments as we go forward. We'll officially call the meeting to order. It is now 12:14 p.m., June 4th, 2020. This officially calls the meeting to order. Roll call.
Curtis Lampley, board member.
John David Vasquez, board member.
Excuse me, Vincent Marquez, board member.
Hello.
I think we have, at least what I can see is Jesus. Jesus, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I had it on mute, I think.
Okay.
Jesus, board member.
Matt Zeiss?
Matt
You're on.
Zeiss, board member.
Okay. And Nick?
Nick?
Nicholas Hall, board member. Nicholas Hall, board member.
Great. I think that's everybody right now.
Tracy Signs, General Counsel.
Who else is attending?
Pastor Hall will be joining back in at some point, as well as Mario, but I think we can get going.
Do we have Curtis Lampley?
He was the first one.
Okay.
About staff, anybody?
Jennifer Allison, staff.
Gonzalo Gonzalez, staff.
Doris Harris, staff.
And Ann Haynes, staff.
David Collins. With that being said, I don't have any specific statements. We'll turn it over to the CEO and President for overview of the budget.
Great, thank you. And this is the presentation that was emailed out yesterday. There's only a slight difference, better labels than the one that was accidentally sent out incorrectly the other day. But as I said before, there's no vote expected today. This is really an ability to dig into some of the details that create the overall budget. I'm going to go through the first couple of slides that it's sort of the broad overview, and then Gonzalo Gonzalez, who joined us about a month ago, who's really learned fast everything about the organization from a finance and accounting perspective, and has created our kind of much more full throttle working model of the budget this year. It's been doing a lot of work to help align the budget to the QuickBooks structure and make some refinements, especially because fiscal year 2020 was the first year where we saw a lot of the transactions for the new organization, specifically around new home development program, but also really getting our own transactional activities back up and running this year. So we do have quite a bit to go through. Want to keep it as best as we can to an hour for your time management. What I suggest that we do is walk through the budget and the assumptions and flag things that we want to dig into in more detail, but certainly walk through the entire document and then come back to certain aspects of the budget. And again, additional detail might be requested, and we're happy to provide.
Yeah. Tony has joined the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did she get in?
She's on the phone.
Oh, she's on the phone. Okay, great. Terrific.
Perfect.
Okay, so right now, let's, Gonzalo, why don't you flip through to the first couple of slides?
Okay, let me see. There you go. First slide.
Great. So as you know, the last couple of years, we've really grown as a team, put a lot of new systems and processes in place, really done a lot of reconciliation with the prior activity of the organization, specifically around reconciliation of older contracts, builders, and making sure that we're well aware of our inventory, reconciling with HCAD and other data sources. Effectively in this current fiscal year that we're still in for the next, I guess, 28 days or something like that, we've really added to our team. We have about right now 8 positions, 7 filled. With Sam's departure, we have 1 vacant position. We did really see our first house sales for the new home development program in this fiscal year, and have spent a lot of time trying to develop the systems to be able to both get reimbursed effectively and quickly by the city for our operations activities, as well as for the new home development program. So that's been a significant amount of work. The budget for fiscal year 2020 that we created last March, April, and May, and spoke about last May and then approved last June, it was definitely aggressive towards the amount of activity that the housing department felt we would be doing during the fiscal year 2020. So certainly some things that we had budgeted for, we certainly did not meet in terms of expected expenses, mostly on the new home development side. We, from an operations and administrative perspective, we had projected pretty carefully and closely what we would anticipate, and we'll see that in the summary at the end as a comparison to projected year end and what our where we are relative to the original budget. We did start implementing our HLB traditional program. That was very exciting to get the group of builders both requalified, pre-qualified, and then the initial lot sales that are actually on the board agenda for next week. We've also really worked hard to look at kind of our long-term growth strategy from a staff management perspective, and some of the initial thoughts on staff operations are in this budget proposal, but we do look forward to working with you all in the next couple of months, July and August, on our longer term sustainability plan, which will ultimately maybe refine some of our assumptions in the budget, but ultimately try and look forward as we continue to grow our programming and our reach within Houston's communities. So let's go to the next slide. This budget, I think I need Gonzalo to, the fiscal year 2021 proposed, there are some key activities that we've assumed in this budget that we're advancing work towards going back through the legislative session and legislative process to improve the state legislation for land banks, especially the one bracketed for Houston, and certainly get to the interlocal agreements we've talked about for quite a while, and wanting to make sure that those are in alignment as well. We certainly think that there are going to be increased efficiencies in sales and marketing of the new home development program, which will be essentially helpful for us in terms of our staff time management and expenses there. We also believe that with the revised A&D agreement that was passed by the council in April, there are some increased ways that we can recoup any expenses we have on the new home development program faster. And in fact, with any new designations of lots in our inventory for that program, we are paid at the point of designation, not at the tail end. So there are quite a few changes that will be in place this fiscal year. We do believe that, and we're counting on increasing our sales under the traditional program, and there's a larger revenue line this year to be able to sell our lots throughout the city. And certainly to build an inventory. And that is something that we'll work on with our sustainability plan and strategic planning, which is building our inventory to do our traditional program as well as some pilot programs. And this was actually a question that, that David raised yesterday. These pilot programs, we have some notions, some ideas that have been percolating at the program committee, at the staff level, but it's really the process of strategic planning through the summer that will cement what those pilots are and what we will try and accomplish in this fiscal year. And then we certainly like to solidify a lot of operating procedures for supporting the growth of the organization and making sure that our staff and work plans are aligned with that in mind. So that is the sort of underpinning thinking process of the next year. I think that the future is very bright for this organization, and we certainly want to kind of continue relationships with a number of other agencies and the city as a whole to be able to work on the goals that we all have and we will all continue to have for this organization. So I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gonzalo. He will be doing the presentation today. I will be adding detail specifically around things that happened before Gonzalo got here. And certainly as we go through, I will be taking notes of things that we want to jump back to and make sure we dive into in much more detail.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate it. And welcome board. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. As I mentioned, I've got about a month here now. It's been a smooth transition overall from my past experience. With that being said, I'll begin with my budget presentation. So what we're looking at here on our first slide regarding the budget, we're looking at the fiscal year 2021 revenue summary. These items we'll go a little bit in detail in the following slides, but at least from a revenue standpoint, what I'm showing you here is I'm showing the HLB program will have approximately 1.3 million in revenue. That's under what we term, or I've seen termed, the traditional program. And those are from admin fees related to disposition of NHDP sales, any sale of lots in a traditional program, and some interest income. Then obviously the next one is the operating grant where administrative costs are reimbursed. We're looking at approximately 2 million. Then we've got the NHDP acquisition revenues totaling to approximately 4 million or 3.9. And obviously those are disposition costs related to the sale, or acquisition costs related to the sale of homes. And then the NHDP disposition revenue coming in at $1 million, which for the most part, in general, the NHDP program operates more as a pass-through with respect to what HLB does as an operating function. Because in reality, what we do in turn is just we receive the property homes once the improvements officially finish. We sign off HCDD and the builder and take in that into our inventory and then ultimately market it and sell it. And at that point, we get reimbursed for any post-construction carrying costs, and any excess funds gets remitted back over to HCDD. With that being said, we're looking at our total revenue for fiscal year 2020, proposed fiscal year 2021 at 8.4 million. Moving over to the next slide, you're looking at the expenditure summary, this is our projected fiscal year 2021 expenditure summary. There's really, as I've been here about a month with the organization, I've noticed that there's really 4 major costs or expenditures that are really coming in through the organization related to our operation. First one is you're looking at professional services, which we're proposing at 722,000. And those professional services consist of legal fees, consulting fees, and it's under both the traditional program or the acquisition and development program, which obviously in that point they would be reimbursed to us. And we have some more breakdown on that in the further slides. And then the next big item that I've noticed is the lot maintenance, which is just basically the maintenance of the properties where there's no improvement. And again, we are doing maintenance on improved lots, which would be for the most part the NHDP homes. But for the most part, I mean, obviously, as we know, the majority of our inventory doesn't have an improvement and it needs constant mowing with respect so that we won't be getting any dawn violations or just clean up the community for that matter. No debris, no tires, etc. The next big cost that I'm seeing is the staffing or salary costs, and that's totaling to about 1.3 million. And again, some of our salaries, well, I would say not some, I would say all of our salaries are reimbursed. It's just a matter of determining under what program, either the operational grant or the A&D or the acquisition and development program, which basically at that point that's a different set of funding for us. And it just depends on the job duty basically, or the duty that employee is assigned to. That'll determine under what reimbursement funding they belong to. And then obviously, I would say like the premise for Houston Land Bank is the acquisition and the disposition costs. We're totaling to about 5.7 million. And obviously this is the intent of this is the increasing of lot inventory and then the selling of inventory under the traditional program, or the selling of new homes to home buyers under the NHDP program as well. With that being said, total expenditures for the fiscal year 2021 budget is approximately 7.87 million. Moving on. So here, as we talked about on the previous slide, professional services. The professional services in the organization consist of legal fees, consulting fees, contract work, and audit fees for the most part. What you're seeing here on the first table, and I think Mr. Collins noted that on the original email that was sent out, and Mr. Collins, you'll see the headers here now, they're being listed on here. So what this first table is depicting is basically the fiscal year 2020 annualized estimate amount. This is still an estimate. Obviously, we haven't closed the current fiscal year, but what you're seeing is this is the annualized amount. And then also we're seeing what we had in the budget for fiscal year 2020. And then what you're seeing here is what we're proposing for fiscal year 2021 budget. As far as the main reason for the decrease is also because And I think the Reese is on here as well. But I mean, she don't really need to explain, but at least from our perspective is some of the legal fees that we had budgeted in the prior year, we're looking to bring some of those services in-house. And I think we'll still be keeping some of those services. We'll be outsourcing some of those services, and the other half we'd also be bringing them in-house. So that's really the biggest drop for the most part. Obviously, also noticing on the consulting fees here, there were some items where we had budgeted last year that didn't come into fruition this year. And I think Ann touched base on that in the beginning of the presentation, where some of those this consulting fee is more related towards the pilot programs that we're looking into, and we're still in the middle of designing and implementing. With that being said, what you're seeing on this second table though is the allocation of these fiscal year 21 professional service expenses. You're seeing where they'll be under what program they'll be reimbursed for the most part. So what you're seeing here is 330,000 of these professional services, they'll be reimbursed under the A&D reimbursement. And then the other 392 will be a blend of operational reimbursement or the traditional program. And ultimately that brings us to our 722,000 for professional services. Okay. The next item that we touched on earlier was also the lot maintenance. So our lot maintenance currently, the way, give you some background on it. My understanding is the lot maintenance program was designed in, I would say, Q4 2019, and then officially approved Q1 2020. We have agreements with 4 main vendors that were officially signed in February under a new pricing schedule. Their services include obviously the mowing, tire removal, debris removal, etc. On our properties, whether it's an NHDP property or part of the traditional property. What you're looking at here is basically, this is the lot maintenance price schedule. Well, we have 4 types. We have here on the below, you'll see the legend of the types of cuts. So we have the first cut, which is basically just to give you an idea, is the first cut is any grass that is longer than 9 inches. And then you've got a routine cut, a normal cut under the 4-week lot schedule. And then you've got a priority cut, which in this case, we haven't really seen any, but we do have it built into the agreement in the event of any DOM violation. At that point, if there's a DOM violation for whether there's some sort of debris we need to remove out of there, or the grass is already out of hand and it's above the 9 inches, and at that point, our operations team will step in and they'll reach out to the vendor and, hey, go cut this immediately. We need to take care of this, etc. So, and what you're looking at here, here's the first cut. Something to note on this is we have first cut twice, routine cut twice. Main reason is because of the size of the lot. So it's tiered by the total square footage. If it's anything up to 5,000 square feet, then they're paid at 0.03 pennies, and then per square foot. And then you've got anything over 5,000 square feet, they're paid at a lower rate. And the same thing for the routine cut. Obviously, the first cut is more expensive, and you'll see because the first tier of routine cut and the first tier of first cut, the first cut is more expensive, obviously, because the concept of that is the grass is more than 9 inches. And then down here, you'll see a flat fee of $50 for where any NHDP property that already has an improvement or a home, that's a flat fee of $50. And then you've got some debris removal at 23 per cubic yard. And then you've got, for each tire that they remove, it's $13 a tire.
And I know we're going to come back to this and drill in more detail, and especially in terms of these projections. But I just wanted to remind everyone that what the rate schedule and the projections here are based on all of the conversations we've had with the board relative to that those final contracts that were approved, I believe, in January or February. I know they were signed in February. But effectively, that is the operational activities that we're under currently. And because it really did kick off in February, we only have a couple of months of kind of what I'm going to call new history of what our costs are. But this is the projection for the fiscal year 21 based on what we know so far.
Correct. Thank you, Ann. So yeah, so what you're seeing on this slide, mind you, taking a step back. As I mentioned, the contracts were officially signed in late February 2020. So technically we only have 2 months worth of invoices. The current month of May, I think we only have one invoice, and we're barely at month end. So normally we'll expect to get those invoices within, I would say, the 10th business day of the month of June. So based off of what we've seen off of the first two sets of invoices for the month of March and April, what we are seeing is we're seeing it trend towards this total mowing line of $583,000 per year. And this is under the routine cut. So what you're seeing here on this column here is basically, I'm putting in, we know there's 52 weeks in a year. We're asking these vendors to go out there to cut the grass every 4 weeks if needed. Under that assumption, by default, they'll always, every property will at least have 13 cuts per year, if not more, if needed. But under this assumption, we don't expect them to have to go out there more than these 13 cuts per year. With that being said, that's what I'm budgeting in the proposed budget of lawn maintenance for the mowing service specifically is at 583. One thing to also note on this is what you're seeing on this budget number here of 583,000 is this is only taking into consideration any lots that are accessible. What's happening is, so obviously when we went into negotiations with these vendors is we told them, hey, we have X amount of lots. We had already excluded certain lots that weren't, that we didn't have access to. With that being said, we're placing some reliance on our vendors, and they came back and also told us, aside from the total 542 that you assigned us, they're also telling us, hey, from those 542, 112 are not accessible. And we are seeing that on our invoices. At no point are they billing us for them, and they also have their notes, and they're also able to send us pictures, which is how we're monitoring that. With that being said, that's how I'm drilling down to this 583,000, which only considers that they're able to do any sort of maintenance on the property, and it would only consider 430 lots. Then I'm also seeing here that any enhanced site preparation, just it's more of contingency funds at 56,000, and then this 11,000 or approximately 12,000 of more contingency regarding debris removal, which would be anything for, as mentioned on the table prior to this one, is the removal of tires. What else? Trees. We've seen trees. We've seen concrete slab, etc. So, and this is what we're proposing, and we're going in this current fiscal year with. We're going in at a budget of 650,000 approximately for lot maintenance annually. And again, the other thing to know is also on this is a factor that we don't control is obviously the weather. So chances are, what this budget is saying is this budget is saying that 13 frequencies or 13 cuts per year. We know in the fall, obviously winter's here, maybe the grass might not grow as fast. So chances are we might also see a decrease in frequencies in some of the properties, which might be from 12 frequency or 12 cuts per year or 11 possibly. I mean, it's just something to know but that's something that's not being factored into this budget because weather's not something that we can really control. We just know that there's 52 weeks, there's every 52 weeks or every 4 weeks they're going out to cut. There's 13 cuts per year. Moving on. What you're also seeing here, I just wanted to put some additional metrics on here. What this table basically depicts is I'm drilling down a little further on our inventory and as far as what inventory is inaccessible, accessible, and also as part of the inaccessible lots, how many of those properties are under the 5,000 square footage and how many of those are over the 5,000 square footage. What you're seeing on here is basically of the 112 lots, only 28 of them are under 5,000. The other 84 are over 5. And I'm still putting on here a monthly number where what you're seeing here, this would be the monthly cost in the event of that we needed to cut these properties. Obviously, as mentioned in the prior slide, this is not something that's being budgeted, but I still wanted to present I think this was some good insight, at least to give you an idea of, in reality, how much we're actually saving, or I guess money not coming out of walking out the door, since technically they can't do any service on these properties. And then you've got the accessible lots, same thing. This is breaking down the accessible lots, which is the total of 430 lots. And I'm just breaking it down here where we have 221 properties under 5,000 square feet and at a total square footage of 803,000. And this is the monthly cost that you're seeing under the routine cut right here at 15,000 approximately. Then you're also seeing the 209 lots, which are over the 5,000 square footage and that a total square footage of 1.7 million of square feet and the total routine cut of 29,606. This is just a total line. And then what you're seeing here is just a total annual cost. So let's just say, and again, I'm just showing here the total annual cost in the event of if for whatever reason, these inaccessible lots were accessible or did become accessible, then you'd be looking at 768,000 just for mowing services. But again, in the current year budget, we're placing reliance on the vendors. They're telling us they can't access them. We've actually gone to see them. Some of them, a few of them, we spot checked a few. They are not, and they are sending us photos. So in the event of, I'm only budgeting the accessible portion, and that's the 583 that you saw in the prior slide. Here's just a couple of photos that we're getting from our monthly invoicing. In this case, these were for the month of April. They read from left to right, the before and after photos. So I think this is on con, there you go. So you'll see the grass here, and then you see it cleaned up. And then the second property here is on Utah Street, I believe. And you're seeing this was the debris, and this is the after the service was rendered. So this is all built into our lot maintenance contracts that we have with our 4 vendors. Just felt some of these pictures would give you an idea of what these vendors are actually doing. This is another one. I think this is actually a recent initiative that we've implemented where we're removing, my understanding is vehicles, boats, and I think this was done, I believe, May 20, yeah, last week, I think. So, yeah, this is just a photo. I was surprised when I found out that there was boats on lots. I was like, wow. And then they showed me some photos, and then I saw this. So that's pretty good. This is another initiative. And you'll see also on here, you'll see these stickers are our Houston Land Bank stickers as well, where we're giving them notice that, hey, you have X amount of days to remove your properties, or not, it's going to be towed away. Next cost that we're going into is this is the other cost also that's one of our largest costs in the organization is we're moving on to staffing and salaries. So 4 bullet points that I wanted to bring up regarding our staffing and salary plans. First bullet point is we're looking to have a salary pool contingency 5% increase on our salary based on performance evaluations and possible negotiations with new incoming staff. From an impact to budget, that would be approximately 31,000 on that notion. Also, we're looking to see if we can bring in the implementation of the retirement system. We did review and we researched with some of the similar nonprofit organizations, and we're looking to stay aligned with them. And we're looking at 3% maximum employer to match employee contribution. And we're looking at the impact to budget on that would be approximately 28,000. We're also looking for, we also budgeted on here a request for an accountant position. The intent, it's requesting a new headcount, but in reality, we also be saving, and that'll be depicted on the following slide. We'd also be saving on our professional services line, which is also being budgeted in the current year as well. Those savings are already reflected in the current professional services budget. There you go. So this accountant would take over and assume all the bookkeeping services, and that would be done in-house. The quarterly compilation report, they would be assisting in this along with me. I would be finalizing those. And then with this accountant position, we're looking at an impact to budget of 50,000 approximately. The other one is the request for our maintenance tech position. As a result, after reviewing and seeing our operations, we've come to notice that a lot of our inventory that we're getting over from HCDD, it does require some minor touches before closing, which is understood. I mean, you can have the buyer or the realtor on behalf of the buyer, et cetera. They're asking, hey, can you please touch up this wood, this siding, et cetera, the shingle, the entrance, the steps to the entrance. So we're thinking that if we can bring in this maintenance tech, they can take care of that in-house as opposed to having to reach out to our vendors that we have out there, or also just constant monitoring as well, because what we do expect is we're expecting to have approximately 30 to 40 houses within the next 3 months. So, and at that point, that will require some oversight on our part. So that's what this maintenance tech will ultimately assist with, is the oversight of these properties until they're sold to a new home buyer. Something to note also is this position will be fully reimbursed under the acquisition and development grant. So this is not coming out of the traditional program funds nor the operational. So that's also a good thing from our perspective. And ultimately, the final impact to this for the budget is 39,000 on this position. This is regarding the request for the accounting position. So what you're seeing on here, this is the annualized estimate amount on here for the bookkeeping services, We're looking at 45,000 for the external accountant services. We're looking at 43. That's a total of outsourced services of 88,000. If we were to bring in this employee in-house, we'd be looking at approximately 50K and total annual savings of 38,000. I know, Mr. Collins, you did point out this on your notes when you sent us back yesterday. I'm more than happy to go over them with you at the end of the presentation, but because I do have some numbers in front of me, just something to. But I will say though, it's actually already over this annual estimate with some of the.
I'll have comments later.
Sure, thank you. So again, with bringing in the in-house employee, also we won't be limited to the scope of duties, because we would also be able to leverage that in-house employee to assist and leverage them into the operations as well under the Houston Land Bank. What you're seeing on here is this is the proposed budgeted fiscal year 2021 org chart. For obviously, we got Ann at the helm as CEO and president. You'll see myself, my understanding is policy and business still vacant. Something to just note of is these blue here is just contractors that we're in the middle of designing and organizing ourselves and seeing what better fits the organization's needs. And one other thing is also these little orange marks here is these positions, they're employed, but part of their salaries would be reimbursed under the operational grant, and then part of it, if not all, would be reimbursed under the NHDP, and that's basically what this little orange ticker is on there. Okay, so with that being said, the summary of staffing costs is we're seeing the annualized estimate at 752,000 approximately. The 2020 budget had $1,064,000, and then the proposed fiscal year 2021 is being proposed at $1,003,000. And then what you're seeing on this table down here is you're seeing the breakout allocation between this $1,003,000 in the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget, and we're depicting here that out of that $1,003,000, we have 871 will be reimbursed under the operational grant, and 429,000 would be reimbursed under the acquisition and development grant, which is good. So, okay, moving on.
Actually, just briefly, Gonzalo, just go back to the staff org chart for a second. I just wanted to point things out. So in this, you can see names of people that currently fill positions. The vacant policy and business development, that is the role that Sam had, although we've adjusted the job description a little bit to suit really a business development position. And as we've talked about growing our programs, whether it's pilots to figure out alternative revenue sources and or relationships and partnerships we want to have, that's what that role is. Below the tech position that the maintenance tech position, I know you can't see my cursor, but that Gonzalo mentioned, which is a request, is really that maintenance tech. And one of the things is that Ron, who oversees both the lawn maintenance program as well as the property maintenance program for new home development program, we've found that with 10 or so properties in our current inventory for sale, he's able to visit every single property once a week and sort of manage things, especially around closings. If we receive the next batch of housing, which over the next 3 months could mean that we have an inventory of 20 to 30 houses, and that is the city's goal right now, is to continually produce houses. That is when we actually need much more ability to get to those houses more frequently. Jen is really leading up I would say the marketing and sales aspects of the new home development program that previously sort of Sam was doing, but I think with her expertise and background has really taken this up to a next level. So we all hope that we don't have things in the inventory for very long, and we're certainly making improvements to that. But I think, again, if you think of the property management team, right now the maintenance tech would be the person that would be probably 100% on new home development program. Ron and Jen have responsibilities all across a couple of programs, not just those. So I think I wanted to make that a little bit more clear. The ones in gray, which is a project manager position and a communications position, we don't have those in the budget at the moment, but part of our strategic planning is to think about those roles and how we suit them with either our existing staff or whether or not we need them. for example, if under the business development position, we come up as a group with a new program we would like to run, and having someone be able to implement that program, especially if we find the resources to do that, whether it's a grant or otherwise, that's what that position would be. And in the blue circles, that's not all of our contractors that we have, but just for illustrative purposes, it starts to show who would be sort of overseeing and managing those consultants. And there's a lot more detail, but I just wanted to highlight those pieces. And I'm sure there'll be more questions as we go. Okay, go back, Gonzalo.
Okay, thank you, Ann. All right, moving on. Thank you, Ann. So again, the other large item is on the other large expenditures as part of the organization is the disposition cost. In this case, we're looking at the NHDP disposition expenditures. Again, as mentioned previously, the NHDP program is really a pass-through program through the Houston Land Bank from HCDD. For the most part, once we get our inventory back with an improvement or a home on it, basically we're in charge of the oversight up until it gets sold, and we'll see some items like where post-construction costs, etc. So this is just an estimate. This is still subject to change because I know we're having weekly ongoing meetings and discussion with HCDD as far as how much houses HCDD can actually turn over to Houston Land Bank through for the next fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 2021 as well. For this purpose, though, we went with 44. This is what we know that's on the construction pipeline, and it may be subject to change still. So just something to note. What we're seeing on here, though, is we're seeing the property insurance is a good amount. Also, we've seen post-construction costs would consist of alarm, utilities, security surveillance, miscellaneous maintenance would be lot services, fencing issues, mailboxes, etc. Legal fees and closing costs, obviously these are all costs that we're paying currently at close, and we're looking at total NHDP disposition costs totaling to approximately $465,000. Again, all of this is reimbursable to us, and it's just a matter also of timing of as far as how long we hold our inventory, obviously. So we'll be pushing this as soon as HCDD turns over these homes over to us. We're looking to unload them off of our inventory list and put Houston citizens into a new home so they can start their lives in a dream house, basically. So the other thing is on the other side of the NHDP program, which is the acquisition side. So currently we do have some ongoing discussions or negotiations. We're looking at acquiring some properties in East Houston, totaling to almost 2 million. Some other properties in further East Houston, approximately 1 million. We're looking at some lots in Independent Heights, 210, and 3 other various neighborhoods, totaling 10 lots, which brings to a total of approximately 3.7 million. We're also putting in a budget in there for 70,000 in case we need to do any kind of environmental studies, feasibility studies, topographic, additional surveys to any potential acquisitions we may be looking at. So again, these are the total acquisition cost on this is 3.7 million. And again, all of these costs are reimbursed under the acquisition and development program as well. Here's just to give you an idea here. So here's some homes that we have available for sale. This is 7819 Virgil, which I believe this was already sold.
Yes.
There you go. So, and this is under the traditional program. These 3 homes right here, 1, 2, 3. This
Below.
is excuse me?
Yeah, the one above is new home development program. The one below is our traditional program with our builders.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yep. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Who's
Okay.
the builder? Who's the builder?
I believe this is Berkeley, but I'd have to verify that because I know that they're building on Orivo.
Or,
Yeah, no, that's Berkeley.
okay.
One at the bottom. 7819 Virgil up at the top, that's a Thompson builder home.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Moving on. With that being said, that brings us basically to our summary slide of the budget summary. And ultimately, again, we kind of touched base on these items already. But it's just a recap of the entire budget of what we're seeing in line items. So again, for the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget, we're seeing total revenue at 8.5 million approximately. Expenditures, we're looking at total of 7.87 million approximately, and we're looking at a fund balance increase of approximately 580K for the fiscal year 2021 budget. So On here, as you can see, you'll see the administrative costs that we kind of went over. We also talked about the NHDP dispositions, acquisitions, and there you go. So,
Yeah, and I wanted to just mention, here's and Gonzalo, you can go through kind of the columns, but the line items, I just wanted to flag anything that says NHDP in front of it, acquisitions, dispositions, and above the line in terms of revenue or below the line, that's ongoing conversation with HCDD. And per our grant agreement, they do have to approve our budget. These are based on what we know now in terms of the throughput of new home development program. Their objectives for the year are higher than what we know are going to happen. And so we've been working with them on, we need the budget to not be as outsized as it was in fiscal year 2020, because they did not achieve everything that they had hoped to, but at the same time, make it reasonable, but they will approve it. And those line items under acquisitions, dispositions, new home development program, revenue and expenses may change. After we've approved the budget for the line items we can control, but we would then come back to the board like we did this past year and get a final, revised, updated budget. So in terms of that, I think we should focus our time mostly today on items that are in our kind of revenues and expenses outside of the new home development program. Not that we can't have questions or conversation around it, but I just think those ones are going to have a slightly longer path for final and formal approval.
Relative to my questions, I'd prefer, Gonzalo, not to take up time of the board, is just sending out a brief response to my questions to everybody. So then that way I don't take up that amount of time, because I had a lot of questions. So I prefer to just let the board members ask whatever questions they have and defer my answers through a little short memo or email to the board members.
will do, Mr. Collins. Noted. Okay.
So,
right.
and just
Any questions from the board members? Hello, everybody.
everybody's mute. They have to
Maybe they're on mute.
Yes, I have a question. This is Curtis. I have a question. If we could go back to the beginning, probably second slide or so, projected 2021 revenue summary.
Correct.
Yeah, the first item there, HLB program, the revenue of 1.337. I'm not quite understanding how we arrived at this number. It includes sales from traditional program and the NHDP program.
Oh,
yes, the admin. Go ahead, Gonzalo. You go ahead. Sorry.
okay. So yeah, no. So this was Curtis, right?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Curtis. So yeah. So correct. The HOB program revenues so the answer is half no and half yes. So it does include from sales of lots of the traditional program, but what we also built in under the NHDP sales, it has nothing to do with the actual sale of the lot. It's an admin fee that we're charging as a result of servicing or brokering the close of the sale, and based off of our staff that we currently have with Houston Land Bank. This is basically just an admin fee. This has no direct tie-in to the lot. This, I would say, the sale of the lots and under the traditional program, that's a direct tie-in, correct? Because at that point, that would all proceeds or funds are kept under Houston Land Bank. We don't remit those excess funds or any funds for that matter to HCDD under the traditional program.
Right. So
Okay.
every lots, and the majority of that 1.3 million is actually the lot sales.
Correct.
So if and I forget what the projection was for this fiscal year, but if we're selling X number of lots at $20,000, that is the primary of the lot sales. The admin fees, every new home development program sale, a lot in the new home development program, we have a $3,750 admin overhead fee that we get for that sale. And so because of the projection in this budget of 44 houses sold, I believe that was the case, it's really not that much money. The majority of that revenue is HLB income, but in both cases, it goes towards our operations, our basic, budget or basic revenue for our purposes.
Okay,
Correct.
so I guess my question, let me add to my question. My view of that 1.3 million is that that's accounts receivables.
This would account for gross sales of any property under the traditional program.
Okay, so it's coming into the Houston Land Bank books as traditional accounts receivables, because all this has been expensed out and now it's coming back to us as accounts receivables.
Not accounts receivables, because in other words, we need to sell it first before we can put it onto accounts receivable.
Okay, so these are projections.
Exactly, these are projections of approximately 30 lots at approximately 20,000 each. That's what.
How many lots?
30.
30. Okay.
Yep.
I personally am hoping that we're selling more than 30. So anything that we sell is a revenue, it brings that revenue up.
Correct.
Okay. So here's my second part to that question, to my concern here, question. This revenue that's projected to come in to the Houston Land Bank books as income.
Yep.
Okay. Once those proceeds enter our books, now that is $1.3 million that the Houston Land Bank can program out for new initiatives?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm interested in more discussions about new initiatives that we will be able to use these accounts receivables for, to implement programs that are independent of the NHDP program.
Agreed. And in fact, if you see under expenses, HLB traditional program, that is, those expenses are not just for traditional program like the closing costs or something like that. That is additionally for pilot programs or other program activity that we want to do. And that's for us, our programs.
And where is that in this spreadsheet?
If you go down to the line right before subtotal administrative costs, you've got an HLB traditional program, and that is in part a placeholder that is reflective of the revenue that we're projecting to come in. But how we spend that money is up to us, this board, during the strategic planning process to identify that plan.
Okay, so under our 2021 proposed budget, that 1.3 million is reflected where? That's under the HLB disposition and admin fees?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And again, that's the revenue line item, Mr. Curtis. The expense line item that she's referring to on this sheet that you're looking at is right before the subtotal administrative costs. And again, this is the placeholder she's referring to under fiscal year 2021. We have 750,000. And again, that'll be more of ongoing discussion.
Okay, so moving forward, what I'm interested in is more of a placeholder that reflects the revenue that's coming in from sales and all of our other reimbursements dedicated to HLB that we can dedicate to new programs.
Okay.
Yep.
And therefore, if we have a projected budget of that income, then we can schedule and prioritize programming that meet that source of revenue that's readily available. And does this number include the Houston Land Bank RFQ properties that will be on the agenda next week?
Are you referring to the 1.3 million?
Yeah, is that inclusive of the sales that will be on the agenda next week?
Oh, you mean the 14?
Yes.
No, so I've told Doris that we are gonna
Yeah.
try and get that into our fiscal year 20 budget.
In our current fiscal year. So no, it does not reflect on there. This would be additional.
We can only use it for 20 if those closings occur before the end of the year, end of the budget year, right?
Necessarily, no, so Kurt, I'm so sorry. So my goal is to get that revenue into fiscal year 20 by June, because we had actually projected that we were gonna sell a lot more lots this year. So that's my goal, but we could spend it in fiscal year 21.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying, which is an important one, is making sure that in our revenue line for our fiscal year 2021 budget, you know, we kind of have a kitty from that income that would be fiscal year 20, but to be used in fiscal year 21. So that
Yes.
revenue line actually may be higher based on new sales, not including those sales.
That's correct.
Or maybe it's not the revenue line, but essentially our bank account has a certain amount of funds that we can be spending towards our programming. So I think for next week, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get that together tonight, but trying to figure out how to articulate that intent a little bit more clearly. But the intent is that that money that we get from sales can be used towards our programs. Some of it does go towards our overhead to run our specific programs, but the
Sure.
majority of it is for our programming that we want to identify how we would like to spend it.
Okay, great. I like to have that noted and come back with a line item or a separate
Accounting
budget and accounting for that,
Yeah.
such that moving forward we have that information to readily work from and not have to decipher it through our budget, just for simplicity purposes.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lampley. Other questions? Hello? Everybody going to sleep?
They're on mute.
No.
They still there, Ann?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I hear you, but I've been talking to the rest of the board members. Have they
Yeah.
gone?
I can see
Well, I
him.
have another question since everyone is thinking of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Under the same, the previous slide,
Sure. Let me,
titled Revenue Summary.
oh, sorry. Let me go back.
Yeah, Revenue Summary.
There you go.
Yes. I'd like a little more explanation on items of bullet 3 and 4. I'm still a little unclear on, I guess some of the terminology is confusing me with what I'm really looking for. And that is, under these two categories, this 3.9 represents what number of properties on the
This-
acquisition?
These 3.9, so it's a number of property along with acres, I believe. And this is the slide that depicted on here.
Yeah, and I want to make this is a really important question that you've raised, because we've actually been trying to talk to HCDD about a better way of accounting for projections under their program. Because I will tell you that last year we had a crazy high number for acquisitions because they said you have to buy 150 lots. In fact, they asked for 250. I said, well, that's a closing a day, which doesn't seem realistic. So let's try for 150. But I do think that it is important that we can't control the market specifically around acquisitions. We can try, and we're going after projects, but at this point, it's all kind of, you know, what is a goal, and it's certainly not something that we can always guarantee that at the end of the day, these are the properties that we would purchase. It's just what there's currently properties that are kind of, we're working on towards trying to meet goals for that contract that we're under with the housing department. So I would say that these ones are not necessarily new home development program lots. These are not necessarily new, exactly the ones that would get purchased, but they're kind of ones that we know of to be able to project a budget.
And Curtis, I would say on that revenue piece, so if you look at the final budget summary, if you look at the funding source for NHDP acquisitions, almost exactly matches the expense piece for new home NHDP acquisitions of 3.982 million. So that number is kind of just a plug.
Yeah.
So they say, hey, we want to spend 5 million on acquiring properties, that revenue would jump to 5 million. If we want to spend, if ACD wants to spend 1 million, that number will fall to 1 million. So both those numbers will rise and fall at the same rate, depending on how many properties ACDD wants us to acquire.
Okay, so
Correct.
this acquisition, is this new acquisitions or is this the existing lot of inventory?
New.
That's why I'm confused.
Got it. This would be new.
I would go to the, well, actually, Matt was talking about the final slide, but these are all new.
Or is it just a forecast?
It's just a forecast.
Forecast.
Okay, okay, all right. That simplifies it.
Yeah, and again, back to those numbers, these are really just placeholders based on ultimately projections and forecasts for the year. But, you know, each transaction and each potential property is just completely up to market negotiations and ultimately conclusion and the ability to purchase something.
Say, and so since you're saying that the 3.9 million, like Matt was saying, so is that a conservative approach? Since you said there you only did 150 instead of 250 or something like that?
Yeah, I would say this is conservative because we're just talking about the 4 parcels or 4 or 5 parcels that we currently well, actually a few more parcels, but that we currently know that might be in the future. But we actually, this is part of that we have up to $10 million, which there's about $8 million left of, to be able to purchase. So if it's up to the housing department, they would like us to sort of do as much acquisition as possible next year. I think that what we're all realizing, especially for new home development program, that a lot by lot approach is a very time consuming and difficult process. And we're really shifting to looking for larger parcels of land that can be subdivided and actually would be more cost efficient for them. So again, this could be 150 single lots. This could be 4 larger parcels. That's all to be determined. And again, we're trying to be as strategic as possible and meet our contract obligations to be able to purchase land. But it is highly, you know, variable as to what our actual experience will be.
Okay, and I need you to clarify something for me. I'm still confused with the term acquisition. If acquisition means properties that are not currently in our inventory to me.
Yep.
Okay, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in addition to the 250 properties, we're being asked to acquire additional properties,
yes,
which may be up to 150 that equals this budget amount.
So when I said 150, I'm sorry to confuse you, but that was in the fiscal year 20 budget.
Okay, but this is this budget number, 3.9 million, reflects a request for future acquisitions.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So what? Okay, I'm confused with. I mean, this is city's program, and they can choose to manage it how they please. But if you hold in 250 properties and you only have 40 or so properties ready to be sold or to be sold this year.
So
that's an imbalance there to me.
Yeah, and I will speak to what I know about that. So
okay.
Behind the 44 properties that are on our existing lots that we know are in a development pipeline, there are another 80 something lots that they're actively about to start the development process on. Anderson, who leads the program, has hired a few new people. That's starting to move, but we do not anticipate in this fiscal year that they will be ready for us to be turned over to us and sell. That said, what doesn't show up in our budget is all of the development activity that they're doing. So there's definitely the gap that you're talking about from future acquisitions. They want us to continue to build a pipeline of lots, but they're still working on the initial reservation. So I hear what you're saying, because it's not as clear from this budget presentation, because there's kind of like there's a missing piece that's not in our budget, but is still actively in a program that they're running. We're maintaining, it's actually in our maintenance budget because we're maintaining lots. And then as soon as they procure a contractor and it goes into the sort of development piece, they're overseeing it. We're doing some, during the construction period, we're checking in to make sure that things meet our expectations for marketing and sale, but it doesn't show up in our budget very directly.
Okay. This whole page of projections is confusing for me.
Okay.
Either it's a terminology issue or I'm not understanding the programming side of what this page represents. And so I'm struggling with the concept of how the projections are being made.
Yep. Okay. We need to make that more clear. So you're talking about the slide we currently see, which is NHDP disposition expenditures, and it's
the 2021 summary revenue summary.
Page 20, slide 20.
Okay.
Yes, this slide is confusing for me.
Excuse me.
I can't wrap my arms around the objective with this slide from a programming standpoint with all of the properties that are currently in inventory, and then we're seeking additional properties. And then how are we programming? I'm trying to wrap my arms around revenue from this, but it's a projection, and then that revenue to go toward Houston Land Bank programming of new initiatives.
A question for Ann. Is it possible for you to take these two items and do a 10-point summary of what's in there and how it's put together? Maybe that'll help.
I'm happy to do it. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So on the screen, I see something that says projected fiscal year 2021 revenue summary. Is that the slide that needs more definition in terms of what?
You're talking about the NDP acquisitions, Curtis, 3.9.
Yeah, I'm talking about the individual bullets, you know, not the title.
Okay.
But you were concerned primarily with 3 and 4 a moment ago, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so further explanation on those two would be helpful.
Okay.
Vincent, were you complete?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment is that the 3.988, that's 47% of the gross revenue. So if that's just a plug number, I just want to make sure it's a conservative number.
I agree. Matt?
But again, that number, so even though it's 47%, it's also 47% of our expenditures. So if that number jumps or doubles, you know, all of a sudden it becomes 76% or 74% of our revenue, it will also become 74% of our expenditures. So those two numbers will move up and down simultaneously. Because what will happen is the HCDD will send us a property, say, hey, we want you to acquire this. We acquire it, and here's $1 million to acquire it. That means our revenue number goes up because we get those funds wired from HCDD, and then our expenses go up the same number minus our administrative cost to go out to the title company.
Okay.
Right? So if we spend $0 acquiring any new NHDP properties, we spend $0. Or sorry, if we acquire 0 properties, we spend and we receive 0 revenue. Right? But if we buy
what would that have? A 0 revenue on that line item? What effect does that have on your net assets?
It has zero effect because the same number. You go to that slide, the final budget, third to last slide.
The last slide.
Here we go.
So this number, NHDP acquisitions, there's that 3.98 million.
Right
If that number goes to 0, the same number on the expense side, NHDP acquisitions will also go to 0, because that means we've bought 0 properties for an HDP. Which means we have sent $0 to the title company, and they have wired us $0 to acquire a property. So this number is a plug because this is what we know is in the pipeline right now from HCDD.
Correct. And ultimately, it goes back to the concept of Houston Land Bank regarding the new home development program. It's a pass-through function. If we spend it, we get reimbursed. If we don't spend it, then nothing happens. So that's really the concept behind that.
Gotcha.
Vincent, Curtis, other questions? Is Nick
I had
still
a question.
around? Nick, who's calling? Who's this?
This is Jesus.
Okay, go ahead.
I had a question regarding the maintenance expenses, seeing as how those are one of our biggest expenses. I just wanted a little bit more clarity. I'm on the last slide, the summary slide.
Okay.
And those numbers, all three of those numbers are kind of, pretty much like they're significantly different. And I just wanted a little bit of clarity on that.
Got it.
Well, this is one of the comments I made to Ann relative to the maintenance, and one particular point I made to her was the fact that heavy trash and debris removal, the city has a program for removal of heavy trash. And what would happen if we just put that on the curb and let them take it? Because when we dump trash and heavy trash, we have to pay a fee for it, right? A dumping fee.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So you might look into that and see if that's possible. Otherwise, let the maintenance guy haul it to the front of the lot on the heavy trash day, and the city picks it up. We already have a contractor with the city that does all that. That's one point. And there are several others, but I won't take up the time. Once Ann answered all of my questions, I'll have some more commentary and I'll send it to her for distribution. But continue, sir.
That and then I guess the second part of that question was
The budget for 2021, is that accounting for the properties we're acquiring as well as the ones we currently have, or I don't know if you could just provide a little bit more clarity on that expense line item.
So this is Gonzalo. Which property are you looking at specifically? Because correct, these acquisition, this would be new inventory. This is not taking into consideration existing inventory. Now, on the disposition piece under the traditional program or the sale of our traditional lots, this would be already inventory we either may have, or it might be the case where we acquire something under our traditional program, but we're able to flip it within the next month or two.
No, I mean in regards to the lot maintenance.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Following
Okay.
everything
Oh,
else.
okay.
It's in regards to the lot.
Got it. So correct. This is already taking into consideration our existing inventory, but it's also modeled in there where we remove a few lots, and then we add also additional inventory. Because what we also projected is which is also on this.
So there's
slide.
projections for disposition and acquisition.
Exactly.
In that lot expense.
Exactly. 36 houses sold, and we're already projecting that in there as well.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Matt, I have one more for clarification.
Go ahead.
On the disposition, I understand what you're saying. Are the acquisition is if it's 0, it's 0. That doesn't change anything on the funding source between the HLB disposition and admin fee? It still stays the same?
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Because they're
So we still make the same amount of money, no problem. Okay.
exactly. Yep.
Actually, we negotiated a higher, for acquisitions for larger parcels, our admin fee goes up based on larger parcels. So really, the admin fee is kind of reflected on whatever we end up purchasing. It doesn't change the numbers significantly, but there is a slight difference, but yeah. Because we have an admin fee on acquisitions and an admin fee on dispositions.
Matt, do you have any questions?
No, I think this is the best budget that Ann and Gonzalo put together based on the information we have available from ACDD, which is far from perfect. I think it's a lot closer to what reality is going to be from our 2020 budget, just because we have better information than we did last year. But it's still far from perfect, just because I think that the information we get at HCDD changes constantly. But I think it's best we have. Best thing we can do.
Okay, next. I guess he's gone. Who else left, Ann?
I have a question.
Yes.
Page 18 for acquisition expenditures. We have ongoing negotiations, East Houston, further East Houston.
Yeah.
Do we have a date or a projection date?
No,
on
we
closing?
can't. No, I mean, these are all in our pipeline, meaning that there might be some conversations. They are not even a true contract yet, but they're looking likely that a contract will go forward if HCDD wants to pursue it. And then each one depends on ultimately so many different factors, but certainly what we're trying to do, actually, just as a look ahead in the next month, is confirm our process for, this is a contract obligation we have to acquire properties for HCDD for this program. We also would like to acquire our own properties for our own purposes. So that's a separate conversation for strategic planning. But for new home development program, we are kind of day-to-day working with their team when we're identifying something or something comes to us from HCDD, and it takes a little bit of time before it actively becomes an actual acquisition kind of under contract. And we do tend to try and update the executive committee as in our draft policies and procedures, and then that comes to the board. Like a couple of months ago, that one property, Frawley property, is a single lot in near Northside, came to the board as a preview that this was going to come down, but we're not even under contract on that yet. So, these things are very hard to project, which is why, to be perfectly frank, I think there's maybe another way to do this where the acquisition line items kind of sit below the line because they're so much less predictable in terms of an annual budget. But it is money that would flow through our account at the time that we do them.
Okay, thank you.
Nick, are you there? I guess not. Who else is left? And
Let's see, we've got John David just spoke.
Did Pastor Hall join us?
No, unfortunately, there was an issue with, unfortunately, someone passed away in his congregation. So he's going to follow up with me later. And I believe we've got most people. I think, is Tony still on? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Got a question, comment?
No, actually, all of my questions have been answered so far.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that,
Vice Chair Collins, this is Nick. I'm here. I've been listening. I echo Matt's statement regarding doing the best with imperfect information, and I would just say that I think that Vice Chair Collins submitted a lot of great questions, and just like to see those answered before our executive committee meeting tomorrow. Otherwise, great work, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Who was that?
Who was that?
Yes. Who's on the phone?
That was Nick.
That was Nick.
Nick. Oh, okay.
He's gone.
I couldn't distinguish his voice.
He's hiking.
And we do have Mario. I don't know if Mario.
Hey, this is Mario. I was a few minutes late to join the call, so I might have missed this, but are we going to get breakdowns of the expenses, on how the totals were determined on miscellaneous items, legal fees?
Mario, that was an excellent question. What I was going to ask Ann and Matt is, our budget goes from June to June, right?
July 1st through June 30th.
Okay. And we have an 11-month record as of today, right? Hello?
Yes, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So
you have can you provide the members, see, the history would be the general ledger of expenses compiled for the 11 months. And then you can see every expense by title, legal, consulting, salary, so on. In other words, the detailed general ledger for 12 months. You have that.
So on the summary page at the back, there is it's a projected annualized amount.
No.
I'm just saying, just so that everybody understands that essentially that column that is fiscal year 2020, it's a rolled up version, but that is essentially what we project for the end of June 30th. And
I don't
right,
disagree.
we understand that, Ann, but we're asking about actual invoices and receipts, so we can actually see the full ledger for each line item.
Yeah. In other words, the detailed general ledger will expand each one of those into
correct
segments.
I understand that. I was just making sure that you saw at least that piece of it, and we can get the compiled, I believe we have through May. We would put that
That's
in.
what I mean. That's what I mean. And that, I think that will help Mario.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because especially
This is Nick,
services
and can we just circulate a detailed general ledger to the board tomorrow from
yeah.
July 1st to
Professional
current?
services and legal services, with you having such a change in those amounts, he's just saying, show the receipts and invoices.
Yeah, if we could just generate a detailed general ledger quick report in QuickBooks and just circulate to the board. Just do it from, July 1st to current fiscal year 2020.
That sounds good.
This is Gonzalo speaking. So how about, because I actually have that detail, Mr. Collins, that you're looking for, but it would not be through today. Can I do it through the date that I used it? I believe was May 15th.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Any other questions, Mario? Nick?
No, that was my only question. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'll just make a comment. I think you did a really good job chairing this workshop.
Well, thank you, sir. And you enjoy your outing. I wish I was with you.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yes, I do. And you have any parting comments?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time and their interest and participation in today's workshop. And we will follow up with answers to questions and the general ledger. And then items will be updated for the board package that will go out tomorrow.
Okay, any other parting comments?
Just thank you to everyone who created the budget, who was involved in creating the budget. I think it was very helpful.
Good.
Much appreciated, Jesus. Thank you. And yeah, this is Gonzalo speaking. Again, just the last slide, it was just more of a reminder. I think we touched bases, a timeline regarding this budget. Today was the initial budget workshop. June 11th, it'll be an agenda item as a possible action item. If we need additional feedback, propose another meeting late June. I don't see that bullet point on here, but in the event of not adopted in our next week's meeting, we can propose another budget workshop, a special meeting if we need to adopt it, or additional feedback, and then ultimately adopt this no later than the regular board meeting in the first weeks of July. And then eventually just refine or go in and amend the fiscal year 21 budget during the fall 21, sorry.
Right. I think if you get those summarized responses and questions answered for the board to review, I think it'll move along. And
okay.
If we have to, we will.
Okay. Perfect.
Right. And last word.
Last word is peace. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And we proclaim this meeting adjourned.
So moved.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.